welcome to the round 21 podcast. So, only 3 weeks left until finals. Pretty much the top eight sorting itself out. I'm just going to preface this episode with a bit of honesty here. Been a bit of a crappy mental health, I'd say, 5 days for me. I'd say so. I'm not going to really be doing a deep dive. I did essentially drag myself to do this because I want to do one good thing for myself, and I thought, screw it, this is it. So that's why we're here. So we're gonna it's gonna be a very scaled back show. I'm not gonna do a big deep dive into any issue. It's just gonna be round recap. Going to keep it under 5 minutes. My team of the week, where I'll try and go in a little bit of detail, and a round preview. So, and just my Supercoach thoughts, like for the captain, vice captain. I'm not going to go a full deep dive analysing all the scores. I feel like this week, though, for Supercoach is a bit more cut and dry. So that makes me feel, I guess, marginally better in that regard. But let's jump straight into it. So, firstly, the round recap. Last week, if we can get this up, we saw Fremantle get essentially outplayed by Melbourne. And the thing was, we're looking through the stats. Actually, I do need my 5-minute timer up here, don't we? There we go, 5-minute timer. Anyway, Fremantle, 39. Melbourne, 85. Melbourne, essentially too strong. They made the most of their disposals because statistically, Fremantle did match them point for point. Or just stat for stat. But they didn't do anything with the ball. And I think that was the big difference. And Melbourne just outbodied them where it mattered, especially in the midfield. They did hold Oliver quiet. That was a good job by James Aish. But then guys like Viney and Petrarca on the outside especially did do a lot of damage. And no one apart from Brayshaw really stood up. On Saturday, Collingwood made it 10 in a row against Port Adelaide. I don't know what more there is to say there. Collingwood won, but Port practically won every stat. So it's one of those games, it could have gone either way. I do think, though, there is a false economy for Collingwood. I think, hey, great, Collingwood's winning. But if you look at you do a deep dive, I don't think Collingwood's that good. And I think if you're playing them, you want to play, like if you're in the finals and you come up against them, I think you do feel confident. But hey, I could be wrong here. I'd love to see Collingwood go deep. But as I said about 2 weeks ago, Collingwood, straight sets, I think that's where that's placed at. In one of the more one-sided games around, Sydney v GWS. God, GWS just want this season to end. They just wave the white flag. I think the big takeaway here is, God, how good is Sydney, though? They are gonna, they're a top 4 team, and they will go, I'm calling it now, they will be in the prelims. They are playing really good football at the moment. They're going to be in the prelims. For GWS, I guess, there was an incident where Prue struck a player, and I just thought, you're 27 and you've played, 30 games at most? And I'm like, why? And then I see stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, that's why. So, that's just GWS in a nutshell. St Kilda Hawthorn. St Kilda did what they had to do. Go them. That puts them in the top 8. I think they won 3 quarters, and then the last quarter they allowed Hawthorn back in. So scoreline, very flattering. Hanbury makes them a better side. I know that Rowan Marshall dominated the rucks, but I still stand by the fact St Kilda is a better team with 2 rucks, and I think they do that against other teams. They probably can get found out, so we'll have to see. They do have a challenging run home. I think for them to make the 8, and they need to win 2 of the next 3, plain and simple. We tick over to Geelong, Western Bulldogs. All the hype, and Bulldogs essentially got outplayed. Geelong, again, such a great team setup, great system. 350 games for Joel Selwood. They don't need a player to have a really standout game, and this is going to show through my team of the week, where you're going to be like, man, I'm going to be like Geelong, best team in the comp, flag favourites, all that, and they're going to be underrepresented in the team of the week. And that's their strength, is they don't need to have standout players to win. They just have a system. The system works. They stick to the system. I like Geelong here, is where I'm going with this. Adelaide v Carlton, this is a real big upset. Carlton really making it hard for themselves. You'd think they'd hang on. You'd think think, like, they probably have to beat Collingwood last round. I think that's where the win comes from, if the win happens. Or the other teams below them trip themselves over. But, oh my God, Carlton are making themselves hard. Adelaide, for them, there was a lot of these lesser-known players, your Worrells, your McHenrys, who stood up into that void that got the job done. Carlton, on the other hand, left too much to too few, and that was their undoing. On Sunday, Gold Coast versus West Coast, really cracking game. West Coast won outside, Gold Coast won on the inside, and that's all she wrote. Could have gone either way, but hard to see Gold Coast making finals. But I think there's a lot to like about them. Another close game, Richmond-Brisbane. The curse continues at the MCG for Brisbane. Shia Bolton is an absolute machine. I will be talking about him a lot in the team of the week. And I think Richmond, of the teams at the moment, I think Richmond and St Kilda are the two best chances for that top 8 spot. Actually, no, I think Richmond ahead of St Kilda, but it's a coin flip. I think Kachi can't still make it, what am I saying? And then lastly, Essendon vs North Melbourne. North Melbourne really pretty much reverted to the mean. Essendon, they are efficient. They dominated out wide. And North won the in and under. But Essendon, if they had done this from the start, I think would be really dangerous. So that's my round recap in 5 minutes and 4 seconds. So close enough to 5. Go me. Let's move over to the team of the week. We'll start with the defense. I'm trying to display this on the one thing. I will find a format eventually that works, that I like. But anyway, in the back line, Mason Redman and Jack Laverde. And then Shannon Hearn rounds up that last back line. Now, Shannon Hearn was I was really tossing up. I think Shannon Hearn, great run out of defense. He was a big impetus in the West Coast game and them playing so well. Signed on for another year, I believe, so he's going around again. Mason Redman was like the best on that ground, and it was not even close. And Laverde held that that second ruck, or that resting ruck in the North Melbourne forward line really well. And a lot of the defense a lot of the rebound out of defense did start from him. So that's the reason for those three. In the half-back line, Brodie Smith and Keane Coleman. I love running backs, as you can probably tell by this team. And you might see Sam Taylor and think, but Mathew, what about X? And my counterpoint is, with the amount of times that ball went into the GWS defense, Sydney should have probably scored a lot more. Lance Franklin, his opponent, should have scored a lot more. I think Taylor did an excellent job. I think to hold someone to 2 or 3 goals, whatever it was, when it probably should have been 8. I mean, again, these are all a matter of millimeters, so I did leave. I will talk about this at the end, because there's someone I want to add on, and I didn't add him on, and he's on my notepad, so I'm really annoyed about this. But Taylor, if he wasn't in that team, I think that is a 20-goal loss. That's how much of a difference he is for that GWS team at the moment. In the midfields, we'll start out in the wings. Petrarca and Mills, both of them really playing out wide. They carved up their opponents. You could not stop them. And I think, especially in the Petrarca's case, was a big difference early on. And I guess Mills as well early on, going out wide. I think Mills was he was made to look better than he actually did play. And he played really fucking well by the limp GWS defense. Meanwhile, Petrarca, just the wide expanses of Perth did suit him. He had a great game. So those are the reasons those are the wings there. Playing an outside game, getting a lot of meters gained, and being one of the big reasons their team won. On the inside, Rowan Marshall, I think I talked about this in the round recap. He was he dominated the ruck against Hawthorn. I do stand by, he's a really good ruckman, but St Kilda are better with 2 rucks in their team. What impact that has on Marshall, I'm not sure, but from just a purely structural point of view, you need the second ruck. But Marshall played well. He's in the team. He's the best ruck by far. Paddy Cripps, Took Miller. It's Took. And Brad Crouch. Now, I am loath, but he played a lot better this week than the week before. And he was, this time, St Kilda's best midfielder. So it was really hard to look past him. It was a contested ball, really dragged him across, got him out into that lead, and when Hawthorn were coming back, he was like the one that stood up. So that's sort of why I've gone Brad Crouch. Paddy Cripps was a solo hand essentially on the inside for Carlton, and Took Miller he's goddamn awesome. And then in the forward line / bench / dudes I have not forgotten about, I do see you, please don't hate me forever, people. We go Errol Goulden and Jakey Stringer on the half-forward flanks, and Jack Darling as centre-half forward. I mean, Errol Goulden just dominated that game. Jake Stringer was essentially the reason Essendon got off to such a good start, and Jack Darling as a key forward. Like, it was essentially a shootout between Mabior Chol and Jack Darling. I couldn't go past both of them, and it was like a really touch-and-go thing, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Sam Reid in the pocket along with Shai Bolton. Now, Shai Bolton would be part of those midfield rotations. I've gone a bit for more of a heavier midfield team. But Shai Bolton, 2 goals, 5. Imagine he kicks straight, I think. If he kicks straight, I mean, he's still in the team. I don't know, do I put him further up the ground? Anyway, Shai Bolton is like, when he's on, Richmond look a lot better. Sam Reid. Now, I'm going to talk about Sam Reid here. I know it's a bit of an odd pick, but I wanted to pick a second ruck in this team because, again, we'll talk about this as well. Sam Reid as a second ruck forward and as a key forward, that resting ruck, he just made Sydney a lot better in terms of, like, Bruce and the GWS team could not deal with that resting ruck forward, and he played the perfect ruck forward game. Competed against Bruce. Didn't have to necessarily beat, just broke even. That's fine. But it's going forward, he did that damage. On the bench, Rory Laird, Javis Stevenson, not Stephen Non. I can't spell. Hooray. Zachy Merritt and Brad Close from Geelong. Now, I know I don't have a lot of Geelong players in here. I'm aware of that. But this is a testament to their system that no one needs to have a super standout game and they still do well. Like, that's the thing about Geelong. Like, Geelong players are always considered. It's just there are players that have better games. But the system at Geelong works. So that's sort of that differentiator. In the considered, Jack Viney, Maxi Gawn, James Aish, Luke Ryan, Connor Rosie. Like, it's really hard to squeeze all these midfielders, and you're going to see DeGoey, Wines, Ross, Steele, Long, DeConning, Stuart Redden. Like, Redden I could have put out wide. Tex Walker, Eric Hipwood, Tom Lynch. That's more key forwards. Heppel out wide. Dawson on the half-black. Walsh out wide. Cumberland as a third forward. Now, as always with these teams, I always have a caveat that this is a team I would see playing an actual match. So that's why I don't pick guys like Rory Laird out in the wings. That's why, like, I didn't have Stephen May here. I probably should have put Stephen May in the considered. It's why I can't pick, like, I can go Eric Hipwood and Taylor Walker. Suddenly I've got four key forwards. Like, that looks stupid, doesn't it? And so, like, for a lot of these players, it's just a matter of inches. Like, you could go, I think Jack Viney over Zach Merritt. And I'd be like, yep, fair enough. Like, a lot of those players, especially in the midfield, in this case, this week, the key forwards, are interchangeable. I think that's an important thing to remember before you say, he doesn't watch the games, or he's a horrible human, or I think he should die. Yeah, that's fair enough. But just remember, a lot of these players are essentially interchangeable. Now, the only one I think wasn't interchangeable is Rowan Marshall. I think that's like the only one I wouldn't have changed. Just because I think he was by far and away the standard ruck, and Sam Reid I essentially have picking because I want a second ruck, and I love me a resting ruck, or resting forward ruck, so that's sort of where that comes in. Again, this is a team I think would feasibly line up in the weekend, and it would make sense. Again, that's why I don't pick in, say, Zach Merritt on the half forward line, because that's dumb. So that's sort of that balance there. Let me know in the comments why you think I'm wrong, why you think I'm a horrible human, or just generally insult me. It's good for the algorithm. Now let's move on to the round previews. So, this week, really excited by how this round's shaping up. So first cap off the rank is Collingwood. Let's give that a bit of a zoom. Collingwood versus Melbourne, or Melbourne v Collingwood. And I think, for me, this is a game that will be determined by how good will Melbourne play on the night. Now, everyone's thinking, oh, Melbourne's in a form slap. Haven't they, I think they've won 4 of their last 6 or something. So they're not playing horribly. It's just they're not playing at the superstar standard we're used to. Collingwood do win games, though. I think that's an important thing. Collingwood did beat them on Queen's birthday. I think for Collingwood to win, they need to nullify the midfield advantage. And I guess that caveat is, how does Collingwood cope with Gawn and Jackson? And can Collingwood play with the 3 talls of, you'd assume Grundy comes in, does Cox keep his place because he's playing well, and does Darcy Cameron keep his place? How do you manage or negotiate those 3 players in the same team? I think, does that mean we drop someone out? Does that mean Collingwood drops someone else? I think that's a really interesting dynamic. I think for structure, you almost drop Mason Cox, but I think that's a bit stiff because he's been playing pretty decently. And I don't see how Collingwood manages this. Now, I think Melbourne do flex their muscles. I think this is the end of the Collingwood run. I think Melbourne is gearing up nicely for that last hurrah in August into September. I'm going Melbourne here quite comfortably by a comfortable 4 goals. Hawthorn into Gold Coast Suns. For me, I think Gold Coast, a lot for them needs to go right to make finals. I don't personally see it at the moment, but hey, funnier things have happened. It does require the teams above them to trip over. And I think they win here because there's something to play for. But I think as a whole, Gold Coast have exceeded every expectation I had. For Hawthorn, this is about who is on their list for next year. What value do certain players have? Are we looking at keeping Jaeger O'Meara? Or do we get value for him? I think those are the questions Hawthorn need to ask themselves. I mean, people always make this speculation each year. I think the game is won by the Gold Coast due to ruck domination. I think Hawthorn have one of the weaker ruck lines in the comp at the moment. I think it'll be alright, but this year it's kind of not up to stuff. Moving over to GWS Essendon. This is I'm not going to say a nothing game, but it has no bearing on finals. I think the only people that are interested in this are Supercoach players if they have Zach Merritt. I think they're the only people that care about this game. Well, I mean, I care about it because I got Jordan Ridley, but that's because I'm stupid. And I guess if you have, Caniglio or Kelly and so on. I'm just going to go Essendon because Essendon are playing better. GWS are checked out. It sucks for their interim coach. He's trying to make a case of why he should coach. It sucks for them. Moving on to a game with a bit more meat and a bit more spice. Let's look at the Bulldogs and the Western Bulldogs and Fremantle. There we go. What Bulldogs turn up? Do we get the awesome Western Bulldogs that make St Kilda look stupid, and then made Melbourne look very meh, or do we get the one we saw last week against Geelong? I think that's the big issue, or that's the big question. Because Fremantle, despite the fact they got outplayed, then the scoreboard says they got demolished, statistically, they didn't play horribly. They just did nothing with their disposal. So, it's not like they got shut out of the ball. It's just Melbourne are just that much better. So, I think this game is determined on how well do the Dogs play. If we get the really good, awesome Western Bulldogs where Bontempelli destroys them, then hell yeah, they'll win. But if Fremantle are able to stifle, say, a Bontempelli or the run out of the back line or that run and carry game, I think Fremantle get the chocolates. Now, for me personally, this is such a coin flip. I'm going to say Fremantle, but the Dogs will probably win now, and I'll be like, oh, I got that tip wrong. But at the same time, if I say Dogs, Fremantle will win. I think this is such a big game in top 4, top 8 ramifications. I think if you're backing, say, a St Kilda, Richmond to make the 8, or Gold Coast, I guess, to a lesser extent, to take that A spot, you're cheering Fremantle on. But Dogs are a good side. Like, they have the makings to do damage in September. And I feel like I'm talking myself into going the Bulldogs, but I'm going to stay the course. I'm going to go Fremantle because consistency is key. All right, in a do or die, not do or die, but because of their percentage, it almost feels like do or die. It is Geelong v St Kilda. Now, Geelong v St Kilda, early in the year, St Kilda won at Marvel. Now they're on GMHBA Stadium, Geelong's home ground. It's really hard to go past Geelong because the system they've got in place now, they are the best performed team in the AFL. It's not even close. I don't see how Geelong lose. I don't see how they lose. I think it takes almost not a miracle. Miracle's the wrong word. But it's going to take a hell of a performance from St Kilda. This is going to be like early season St Kilda, where they were in the top 4. It's got to take that St Kilda to beat Geelong. Keeping in mind, Geelong are playing better now than they were when St Kilda were in the 4. With all those things conspiring against them, and the fact Geelong are an awesome team, it's in Geelong, I don't see how Geelong lose. But it could be one of those things where I look back and go, it was so obvious. For St Kilda to win, I think the big thing for them, hold on, we'll put my notes in. They need to get their system right. I think they need to play 2 rucks. And they need to win that ruck battle. So a lot rests on Rowan Marshall getting the better of Johnny Segler. And who's the other one? John Segler and I always forget who their other ruck is. It will come to me. Or Reece Stanley. There you go. Reece Stanley. He was was he a former Saint? I think he was. But anyway, Rowan Marshall needs to get the better of those 2 rucks, and he's supported by us. I'd say Tom Campbell. He's not Paddy Ryder, but he does a job, and I think in AFL, you need people who do jobs. How Cats win, I think that outside run and that delivery and that system where they're able to funnel the ball out of their back line into the forward line and go from there. Because it only takes one of Cameron, Hawkins, or Rowan to fire as those lead-up options. And then at their feet, you've got Tyson Stengel, who, let's be honest, has probably been one of the best recruits this year for what they pay for him. Essentially nothing. I think he's been one of the best recruits. For St Kilda, again, those 2 rucks. And that gets guys like Hanbury, and St Kilda look a lot better with Hanbury in that side. I think for me, this is the game of the round. And if I was going to block out time to watch a game, 100% this would be the game. Because I think this has This and the Bulldogs game have the biggest ramifications on the 8. For me, Geelong, they're at home. They've got the great system. They are a good team. They are the flag favourites for a specific reason. Port Adelaide, Richmond. I don't think Port make the 8, but I can see them ruining Richmond's season. I think this is one of those danger games. I know it's thrown around a lot. There's a danger game here. Richmond need to win just to put the pressure on St Kilda. Richmond should win in saying that. I think they have more to play for. I don't think Port make the 8. They are 3 games out with 3 rounds to go. They need a lot to go right. So, how do Port win? Let's just go. Port, how do they win? I think they have to win the midfield battle and break even at the rucks. Now, Finlayson has been their main makeshift ruck player. There's a Miss Teakle. That is not a long-term solution, and they will get destroyed in the rucks, and especially against Nankervis. So, Richmond will win the rucks. It's where the Port can break even. If they can break even, I think they're in a good shot. Otherwise, I think Richmond should be too strong. So, for that reason alone, I'm backing Richmond. North, Sydney, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Sydney by how much? How much percentage do you want? North have reverted to the mean. So, They just want the season to be over. I'll talk about their priority picks in a bit later, like in a future episode. Brisbane Lions v Carlton. I think this is a fascinating game. I place it third on the games I'm interested in watching. Like, Carlton essentially just need one game and they make the... I think with how the draw is, they make the 4. It could be this game. It'd be a great statement. I think for Brisbane, they need to win to stay in touch with the 4. Because I think Collingwood and Sydney have really amped up that pressure. I think Collingwood's vulnerable, so Brisbane can take that spot back. For me, it will be Brisbane, only because the midfield domination... Like, if they dominate the midfield, which I think they will, they can get their outside runners into the game. By getting their outside runners into the game, it means you feed your Danahers. It feeds your Hipwoods. By feeding your Danahers, by feeding your Hipwoods, it gets them into the game. Like last week, Danaher, 3 goals in the first quarter, did nothing afterwards. For me, he's almost there, Danaher. He's due for a big game. It's just, when is it? For Carlton, if they are going to win, it's that outside run, that back line. So whoever wins the outside wins the game. And I think Carlton with Saad and Doherty have 2 of the better outside backmen to get their guys like your Fisher and all that in there. So I think there is stuff to work with Carlton. I find it interesting though, Carlton's structure are better with Silvani in there. So I wouldn't surprise me if Silvani comes back. I don't know what they do though, like, because you need to... I think a lot of clubs need 2 rucks, so I don't know how Carlton look. But for me, I think my head's telling me Brisbane. I think it's at the Gabba. They should be too strong. Essentially, I have less questions about Brisbane than I do Carlton at this point. That's what it came down to. And last but not least, West Coast Eagles and Adelaide. This is a fun match if you like Supercoach, because you got Laird. That's all I got. That's all I got for this game. Like, the Perth factor is the only reason I'm going West Coast, but I expect this to be watched by people who own Rory Laird, Ben Keys. For some reason, if you have a West Coast midfielder on the field, which, hey, if you do, yeah, go from there. But the Perth factor tells me, hey, go West Coast. Next, we're going to talk Supercoach, so I'm just going to get that there. So I'm going to be really quick here. Now, this is a bit of it just goes hand in hand with the draw. So last week I gave option A, option B, because I really was unsure. Option A was Bontempelli into Neil, which was 98 Bont into 110 Neil. If you went that option, meh. Massive amount of meh. And then option B was Clayton Oliver on the Friday, who got tagged by Aish, 85, oofed. And then into Laird, who scored 144. So essentially, if you went Laird, you were safe. This week, now I'm going to caveat this with I'm using my own team here, but there are a lot of options. So, for example, if you're able to maneuver your team, so we'll use Treacle, the Port Adelaide Ruckman, as our line. So the Richmond game is, the Bulldogs will be the last game for a vice captain. I think you're going Took Miller, and it's not even close. He's one of the 4 midfielders of the competition. I think we're picking him as our vice captain. I think that's my best bit of advice. And then you're doing that into Laird, who play West Coast. So easy claps there. Now, if you are able to maneuver your team in a way where you have a non-playing Brisbane player, or you're holding Hewitt to hopefully get out of his injury, or you've got a Brisbane current player on the bench somehow, like maybe you've got Carroll sitting there, which you do, fair play, you can look at North Melbourne, Sydney for your vice captain, and then you can go with people like Mills, Parker, any Sydney midfielder I think will do well. Outside of that, I don't think there's a lot here. I mean, Merritt's in a hot run of form for Essendon if you want to go that way for vice captain. But if you got Took Miller, I think that's the safest option. So for me, my advice is Took Miller against Hawthorn in Tasmania. Pretty easy points there. Into Laird against West Coast on the wide expanses of WA. And I can't see the pressure being high in the West Coast Adelaide game. So yeah, that's all my super coach advice. Now, lastly, I'm just going to talk briefly. So, that's why I haven't done it in depth because just crappy mental health week. So just quickly, just remember, if life gets you down or been having a bit of a crap time, call Men's Helpline if that's an option, or Headspace. You've got all those options. If you're young, I think you also are getting psychology sessions from the government for free, so you've got those options as well. Anyway, on that note, please look after yourself. Please be kind to each other. If you've got feedback, always welcome. And I will see you next week. See ya.